Helps if I turn the microphone on. You know, the start of the stream. And I probably don't need my glasses since I'm right next to the microscope camera here. How's things going, Pacific? I saw you had some morning sunrise photos on your Discord. Hey, Sarah. How's it going? Do I have my radio voice on? I can't tell. My wife always tells me I talk differently when I'm lecturing. Last time we left off, we were looking at a sea star, and it was this one. Same specimen. Hasn't moved from the previous one, but in the stub that's adjacent to it, I have another sea star now, and this one's flipped over, so we can see what's on the bottom side. So we were looking at the top side before. Let me see, I actually probably want to zoom out, which is not the usual pattern for our stream, but I will move the stage downward as far as I can make it go, which I think is 33 or something, 35. So you can see the whole thing at once, and this is one of the sea stars in the same group that was collected with the previous, that came from the Indiana State University's EES aquarium. It's a saltwater aquarium. And this one came home with me, and then was in the little container that they gave it to us in, and eventually climbed up the side to the point where it was out of the water and stayed that way for a while, so I assumed it was not living. Which is a slightly better fate than it would have had if it had just been thrown in the trash, I guess. And then I put it on the sputter coater this morning, right before the stream here. And we can see in the underside of the sea star, this is basically, you know, where stuff comes in and out of the sea star. And then the arms, this has some of its arms are sort of curled upward, which are now curled into the stub as a result. But you can see also the overlapping plates, the same overlapping plates that we saw on the outside of the sea star that we were looking at on Saturday. And then there's these little rows of, I think they're the actual legs. Maybe they're special sort of type of plate, but I think they're actually the legs themselves. Or maybe their legs are soft and these are just kind of like the rows of spiny bits that go along the edges, but they seem to be concentrated where the legs would normally go, which is they jut out these little openings on the arms of the sea star. So I'm gonna just zoom in. I'll get this, I don't know, looks like it's kind of in focus already, but see what I can do with the focus. Maybe I can make it a little sharper. And then we'll zoom out and get an overview shot.
Good news, everyone!
Everything seems like it's probably going to work. And I'll just get that picture started so we can have an idea of what we're looking at. So, Batiart, hello. The Groove, yeah. Oh, Super Good Labs is here. Hey, Super Good Labs, how's it going? Welcome into the stream. Ambulacral groove. So ambulance means like walk, so it's basically just the walking groove or something like that, right? Just to break all science words apart into their meanings pretty easily if you just look at them and you know a little bit about, words. Yeah, so this is what it looks like in a scanning electron microscope. Oh, the tube feet are actually like little noodles. So are these just little ossicles that protect the groove? Is that what's going on with that? They don't have any hard parts in the actual feet. You love the little tube feet, yeah. So I don't know that we'll actually see the tube feet. Those are probably desiccated. You can phone a friend. I mean, you can, I don't know what you can do. Sure. Do you have a friend who knows something about sea stars? Oh, I mean, I suppose we could ask him, if you want to ask Christopher. I don't think he's on Twitch, so. I mean, he didn't answer my previous question about what those things were on the outside, so, So for the scanning electron microscope, what we're seeing is basically just the topography. It's the same as if you had a stereo microscope at this point because we're so zoomed out. Hey, Mama M Media, hello. Just taking away the jobs of my moderators by doing the shoutouts myself. We are looking at the underside of a sea star, Mama. How's things going? A lot of times people come into my channel and I have no idea that they're streamers, and then I have to kind of figure it out from chasing down their profile. Sea star. This is the underside. And then we can spend a little bit of time zooming in, looking at the parts. You're not a bad mod, I'm just faster than you. Glad to be here. We are waiting to use a loaner low vacuum Hitachi SEM in your lab. It doesn't use a sputter coder, so I imagine it's different than what you're using here. So I'm here to get nerdy on the SEM. Oh, cool. Those desktop versions that don't use a sputter coder are pretty nice. You can see a lot of good stuff in them. They're not quite a full-sized SEM with respect to the resolution and the imaging power, and of course it's often very challenging to get them fitted to do the elemental analysis, which is part of the reason why we had to not use the little models but instead use these the large scale version. And here's these little, I don't know if they're the legs or if they're just things that protect the legs. They're all lined up around the outside of the leg grooves. So it's possible. Could be they're just some sort of specialized ossicles. One of the things that makes me sort of suspect that they might be related to the legs or the feet is that some of them are way outside of the groove itself, and all I did was literally like pick it up and put it on a stub. So if there was an organic part that was sort of like in there, the vacuum probably would have caused those things to shrink away to nothingness. And so you can see there's sort of like a goopy layer around them, which may be what happens to most of the legs, but these little parts are basically kind of stuck in the goop. So it suggests to me that maybe there's at least some aspect of it that could be, these could be parts that are inside the legs, or maybe at the base of them or something. I don't know. I'm not a sea star expert, obviously, but doesn't stop me from putting stuff on the SEM. Take a look at it. An anonymous chair with 2 bits. Can we peek at the end of the arms? Of course. Let's see. Are you streaming later this week too, or just today this week? I probably will also stream on Saturday. I think that's going to be my new sort of plan, is Wednesday, Saturday. I need to think a little bit about what I want to put on the scanning electron microscope for Saturday still. I haven't thought that far ahead, so I'll try it up like raisin toes. Yeah. We can figure out who was the anonymous cheer if somebody shows up and suddenly they've got one of the low-level badges, I suppose. You teens like to watch my stream. Oh, well, that's cool. You know, I like to try to make it as accessible to families as possible, as usual. So, although I suppose if they're teenagers, I probably am not going to be, and I probably don't have to worry too much about being careful with my language. Now we know what happened with Pacific Plankton cheered. Assault emotes with witch hats. I also figured out the witch hat thing. I turned on the seasonal hats, so... yeah, that's a live stream, like, here underneath me. That's the view of the stage. Hang on, it's the chamber view. Here, I can make it bigger. I think it makes it bigger for you guys, right? So you can actually see in the inside of the chamber, there's the external view of the sea star and the internal view of the sea star, and then there's some mushrooms around the outside edge here. It's funny that you're here, Super Good Labs, because I actually stuck mushrooms on for the stream today, and I think Pacific told me that you're a mushroom person, or that you have mushroom stuff that goes on in your labs. So I can defer all my questions about mushroom stuff directly to you, which makes my life easier, but your life more complicated, potentially. I don't actually know the names of the mushrooms, but I can describe them. So let me actually answer that question that Super Good Labs put on here. Let me first get this picture set up, and then we'll... So this is underside, leg groove. Just wanted to label it so I could get it out of the way, and then we can zoom in on the ends because that's what I was asked for. It's a little bit of a differentiation right at the very tip. And then here's these little feedy spines, and then there's the spines that go around the outside edge that we saw. And they actually look like compositionally they're pretty similar. And then these are the plates that are calcareous plates that the echinoderm is made up of. And what I'll do is, how about we zoom in a little bit closer on that. I mean, we're still only at like 200 times magnification, so it's something that you could do on a stereoscope, basically. But if I do this, we're suddenly no longer in the stereoscope range. Now we're at 1,000 times. Let's clean up the focus a little. There. just give it a little bit of context. And that should work. And then what I'll do is I'm actually going to take a long picture so I can talk a little bit about how the SEM works. And I ramped up the resolution by decreasing the beam intensity. And I'm going to actually slow the beam down to the next level down. So we'll get a nice high resolution shot of this, but it'll give me a chance to pull up some pictures and talk about how the SEM works for people who aren't familiar. And then I can actually do a little, I can show you a little bit of like what the lab looks like as well as a thing for people who maybe haven't seen one of the streams before, or just am sort of curious about, you know, what it looks like outside here, right? Because you can see what's inside the chamber pretty easily, and then the camera kind of looks into the lab, but to get a sense of what the SEM looks like, I can't open it because we actually have the samples in there already, but let's see. This looks good in terms of exposure. Beam intensity is good, so I'm just gonna start that going, and it'll give me a little 10-minute window to try to talk a little bit. Hey studio, how are you doing? Okay, so let's see. Here's a picture that I have of the instrument. I'll just put it over here, and I think it'll fit right there. And then give me a second to move myself out of the way. There. Okay, so in a scanning electron microscope, the electron gun is up at the top, and then there's a chamber that the electrons are fired through. And so up in the actual electron gun, there's just two little posts with a filament that goes between them. And it's a tungsten filament in this scanning electron microscope, but not all SEMs work that way, but this one is a tungsten filament, which means it's basically just like a light bulb. Except for light bulbs, you're heating up the filament to give off light, and in the scanning electron microscope, you're just putting a charge through it. It does get heat up a little bit, but also what it's doing is creating a little cloud of electrons that stay in this chamber at the top. That's called the Weinhold cap, where it says electron gun, and then the beam is actually created by the anodes, which there's a little ring of positively charged components, and the electrons have a negative charge, so they're pulled towards it, and that actually pulls the electron cloud out of that chamber, and then accelerates it. There's another anode at the bottom that also accelerates the electrons, and thank you for giving Mrs. J a shout out. And then instead of having lenses like a typical light microscope has, in order to focus the beam and keep it basically in a tight position where we can stabilize it the way we want it, we use a set of magnetic lenses. So there's just powerful magnets inside the chamber, and everything has to happen inside of a vacuum, because if there's any kind of water or other particles in the air, then that actually creates diffraction for the electron beam, and then it's fired down onto the sample, which in this drawing, the sketch here, is an ant. In ours, we're looking at a sea star. And then the electron beam actually penetrates into the surface of the specimen, and the accelerating voltage controls how far it penetrates into the specimen, and it knocks electrons out of the actual material. So the electrons coming in basically knock electrons out, and some of them escape the original specimen, and then there's a positively charged secondary electron detector in there. It says detector, but it's actually more like a electron magnet. It has a positive charge too. And when the electrons hit it, what happens is there's a sort of a photoreceptor on there that like creates a bright spot, and the more electrons that hit it, the brighter it gets. So if no electrons hit it, it's dark, and if a lot of them hit it, you end up with a bright spot. And then the scanning electron microscope moves back and forth very quickly over the material, and for each point, it basically records bright or dark, and the level of contrast and brightness of those individual points are then translated into a picture that's drawn. So everything that you're seeing in the actual image is not a photo at all, but just that electron being, that electrons coming out of the sample being captured at that point. And then it just builds its way across, scanning bits at a time. And there's also a backscatter electron detector in our SEM. There's a backscatter detector which tells you things like density of the material, and electrons come from a slightly different source, and they are radiated directly back out to the surface, backscattered. And I don't usually have that sensor in because I'm looking at diatoms or something that's basically all calcium carbonate in the case of a sea star. And so we don't actually see much difference from one to the next. And this also has an elemental analyzer in it. So if I wanted to know that this was mostly carbon, I could turn that on and it would come back with carbon, calcium, and oxygen, which is what it's mostly composed of, and give us that information back. But we don't usually use it. Hey, headshot specialists, how you doing? Can specimen become damaged from overscanning or scanning at too high of a charge? Yes. The samples are always losing some electrons. So in the sense that material or mass is being removed, then yes. But, for most materials, losing a few electrons won't really create much of a difference. And so if you just left the beam sitting on a single small area of a sample for a very long time, and you turn the accelerating voltage and the beam intensity all the way up, it would eventually burn a hole in the sample. And people use this to their advantage for looking at the chemistry of some of the materials. So they'll use the electrons, or they'll use a laser and actually burn holes and then use the electrons to give some information about the material itself. So that's just a model for what it looks like inside. And then the interaction for the actual beam looks something like this, where the beam comes in. As I mentioned, some stuff comes out, it hits material, and then electrons are scattered back to the surface. And this gives us topographic information. These are the secondary electrons. And then some of the backscattered electrons come in, but they don't come out with as much energy. And so they come from a little bit deeper in the sample and then are reflected back and captured at the top. And it gives us atomic number and phase differences. And then this model also shows characteristic X-rays. And characteristic X-rays are how we figure out what the elements involved are. And that's done by... So the cartoon model for an atom is that it has, a nucleus in the center or whatever, with protons and neutrons, and then this cloud of electrons that's around it in sort of shells. And if we knock electrons out of one of the shells from, incidentally, the beam knocks an electron out from a shell at a lower level, what happens is electrons will have to replace it from a higher level. And when it does that, the electron goes from a higher energy state to a lower energy state, and it actually gives off energy as a result in the form of X-rays. And so the energy that it gives off is characteristic in the sense that if it's a certain element going from one shell to another, then the energy it gives off is something that we could actually detect. So you can get elemental information out as well. Let's see. Because of the vacuum, the lenses don't have to be super close to the specimens. Yes. The lenses are positioned up in the chamber itself. And if you look into the actual sample, so let me hide this for now. We don't need to look at that. If you're looking into the actual chamber, this is called the pull piece, or I just call it the cone sometimes. And the electrons are coming out of a tiny little beam onto the sample through that cone. And so there's this much space inside the chamber. And I will show you what happens when I move stuff around. So if you focus just on what's going on in the chamber, I can show you some things. One is we can rotate whatever we're looking at. So of course, not like a light microscope. Light microscopes, you can't just, I mean, you can turn your sample in a light microscope, but if it's in a fixed, if it's a fixed specimen, you can't. It'll be just locked on a cover slip or a slide. And in an epoxy, in the scanning electron microscope, you can actually do all kinds of cool things. For example, we can tilt the stage. I will give you an example of that. So if I wanted to actually see the side of this thing, I can tilt the actual stage. There's a 10-degree tilt, and I can take it up much higher. Here's a 35-degree tilt. So the stage moves, the beam doesn't, but it actually allows us to see things from the side. So we actually have the power not only to rotate the sample, but we can also tilt it. And you can use this to create, you can use this to create three-dimensional models. If I take a picture from this angle, and then I rotate this sample around, so now it's at 60 degrees. If I rotate it around 20 degrees to 80 degrees, the stage will spin, and I can take a picture 20 degrees off from the original. And you can continue to do that, rotating the sample around. And just like Google creates three-dimensional models of the Earth by having a satellite pass over and take pictures from many angles, you can actually create a three-dimensional model of the sea star if you'd like. And actually you can see a bit of the stub that's in the middle now blocking a bit of the edge of field of view. So if I wanted to do that, I probably wouldn't do it with the full carousel filled with samples on there. I would take those off. And also you have to be very careful when you're tilting the stage. I'm very low with respect to where I am on the stage, so I'm not going to actually reach a point where I could hit the cone or any of these other parts, but you could, if you're not careful with your specimens, you have to make sure you know the dimensions of your samples and where they are. Because if it's on the outside edge of this carousel, you could potentially ram something into one of these pieces and destroy or damage the SEM. So I try to be very careful, and I try not to let anybody besides me do any tilting, because I don't trust that they know what they're doing usually, unless I lower the stage all the way down. And then you can tilt it up to 70 degrees, I think, in this SEM. Again, I would only do that with one sample on the, one specimen on the center plate, and I would get rid of the carousel. So we'd just be looking at starfish if we wanted to do that. And we've done that before. So this is an example. I know you've got a maker lab that you're also doing super good labs. So this is an example of a diatom that we created doing that. We actually, we did half of a diatom by imaging it from a bunch of different directions and then putting it into Agisoft and creating a three-dimensional model. And I have a skinned version of this that's in a PDF file somewhere as well, the little ability to move it and turn it around so it looks like the actual diatom. And then we just printed two of them and glued them together with some sticky glue. But that's an example of that. And this was created by taking about 70 images of the diatom. And the value of it, of course, is that it's perfect in the sense that it's not a conceptual model, but it's actually a specimen. So that's kind of neat. This diatom is a species that I described. This is Stephanodiscus caruscus. And the specimen that you're looking at, when it was in the SEM, was probably 30 microns in diameter. So I actually like these a lot because you can then basically hand this to somebody and they can get an idea of what this shape actually looks like. Whereas if they just see pictures, they might not be able to get a sense of it quite as well. So, but yeah, there's a lot of travel space, and so you have to kind of use that to your advantage. If I want to get close to something, I just move the stage up, right? And if I want to spin it around, I can just spin it around. So you just have to be careful that you don't smash something into something else. If you have different height samples, that creates a potential problem. So we can easily do, any position that we want that's inside of that set of parameters. So we can rotate 360 degrees, and then with this scanning electron microscope, and then you can tilt the stage, as I said, up to about 70 degrees. So you could really look at something from the side pretty easily. You just have to be very careful about how you handle it. So, but I think that's kind of a neat aspect of the SEM. And let's see, this SEM in particular is a Tescan Vega 3. And it is, part of the reason I bought it was because it had this power to basically just turn the stage, and it keeps the sample in the field of view, or almost completely in this field of view, when you spin it or tilt it. Whereas in a normal SEM, if you tilt it or spin the stage, you have to manually put it back on the same specimen in the same spot. And that makes everything that I just mentioned much, much harder to do. People usually quit before they try to complete a task like that, because it's a little too challenging to do it if you don't have a computer assisting you with where you are. We can also just go in and type in magnification. So if I wanted to type into the magnification here 3000, it will just zoom us into 3000. So if you want to have a fixed magnification height and then you rotate it around, you can do that pretty easily. So okay, I've been talking a lot and not looking at chat, so give me a second. It's hard for me to do both at the same time, because the SEM, especially when I'm rotating the stage, needs all of my attention. And so if something exciting happened or people have questions or whatever, just wait a second and I'll be there. And hopefully Pacific Plankton addressed any of those. I'm going to collect another picture here just of these overlapping plates from the underside, so that I can have this sort of nice texture, which I really like here. And it'll give me a second to come back out and talk to chat. Del, hello. Okay. It's scary when he moves it up. Yeah, it can be scary, right? Thank you for giving Headshot Specialist a shout out. Right, let's see. Keep your finger on the stop button. I actually do, and Pacific Plankton knows that. Even when I tilt the stage, my finger's on the stop button, and I train people to keep your finger on the stop button in case it looks like it's getting too close. You can never be too safe with a $160,000 piece of equipment. And my students don't typically have $160,000. It's like the cost of a house. So, let's see. Printing the wedding ceremony. Oh, nice. Yeah, you're officiating for some people, right, Del? Yeah, there's an emergency stop button. From my side, there's a button that just says stop, one that says home, one that says calibrate. So I can just basically pump the brakes if we run into some issue. Okay, let me see if I can make the droid cam on my phone work. It's usually like 70-30. Sometimes it works. Occasionally it doesn't. Let's see. And if it does, then I can switch. Oh, it's working. Good. Okay. So I can do a little sort of quick tour while this picture is collecting. And it's going to be a little bit wobbly camera because, you know, I'm holding it in my hand. I don't have a gimbal or anything, so just put up with it, I guess. Yeah, I know. In California, it's not a house. Here in Indiana, it's a nice house. Okay. So I'm going to switch this out to full droid cam. We'll no longer be looking into the SEM, but looking at it from a distance. And I'm also going to take my headphones off. Really, I'm just using them to listen to music, and that's it. Okay, so let's see. Full droid. Here you go. So you can see, actually, I don't actually show people the panel very frequently. So you're asking about the stop. There's a little stage settings here where I can stop stuff automatically. I can also stop any picture that we're collecting automatically. And then I have all of the controls that you can see, basically, but this stage control is not one that you can see. And here's where you type in rotation and tilt, and here's the height. Pacific got to see those. And then this SEM has a little panel of controls. This one is the magnification wheel, and this one is the focus wheel, and then there's these little knobs that we can use to do other things, like turn up the brightness, the beam intensity, or the contrast. And there's a little stage joystick, which I never use. There's also a little wheel mouse, trackball mouse back there that we never use, even though I use trackballs when I normally use a laptop. And then, so this is the computer down here, and there's a second computer for the EDACs that are running the actual SEM, and the SEM is this thing. It's not actually that big, so there's a monitor for scale, and it's about the size of maybe 2 computers stacked on top of each other. And this is the portal that looks into the SEM. It's got an infrared camera. That's the thing that you're seeing. And then there's like a little drawer right here that we use to open and close to put the samples in. And the stage and everything that you're seeing is basically inside this part, this big metal piece here. It's like a drum. And this is the elemental analyzer, the EDAX elemental analyzer. Looks into the chamber, and in the little black and white picture that I show you, it's actually there's a little something coming in the top left corner, and then this is the secondary detector that feeds all the information back into the scanning electron microscope. And that's the actual electron gun right there. It's getting the beam into the actual material. And then the whole thing is like a desk. It's not that big, but the desk comes with the scanning electron microscope. And then this is the computer that runs the EDAX equipment. And then got a little prep area over there in case I need to use a overhead camera, or I need to use a stereo microscope. And then this is just tracking our samples. There's a whole set of samples and stuff back here from previous times when I've used this scanning electron microscope, so I just archive all of the things that we use. And then that is the sputter coater over there, and some more samples. Those belong to Dr. Spear, and some prep materials. These are the actual like stage carousels that you can see with samples on them. And the thing that you're seeing into the infrared camera is basically these little stubs and stuff that's mounted on them. Is, you know, it's about the size of your fingertip. It's actually pretty small. So this is the lab itself. So it's actually a pretty big space in our lab. But in a lot of people's labs, the scanning electron microscope is a pretty tiny little closet because they didn't build it with a plan for that in place. In my lab, we actually we actually replaced a classroom. So this used to be a teaching classroom, and we replaced it entirely with the scanning electron microscope. So there's a lot of space in here. And then not seen by you is there's a pump over there that's making all the racket in the lab. And then around the corner, a nitrogen tank that we use to vent the chamber when we need to pump air into it so I can open it because it's under a vacuum. So almost everything that you do on this SEM is controlled by the computer. And I don't need to reach over and touch the SEM at all. And almost everything can be done by this little panel and that mouse. And there's just a few things that you need to have a keyboard to modify. So, but that's the most of it. It's cold in here, yeah. Always, right? Okay. Oh, has anybody ever told me that my voice puts them to sleep? Yes. Students in my classroom sometimes fall asleep. I have somebody said Bob Ross. But I sometimes get people complimenting my voice, and sometimes people don't like the fact that it puts them to sleep because they're trying to stay awake. So, but if you need to take a little nap in the middle of my stream, that's fine. I'm not going to judge you. So, it doesn't make my daughter go right to sleep though for some reason. Okay, let's see. Yes, it's hey Shadowfax. The nitrogen gas tank is exclusively so that it doesn't pump dirty air in, or we don't have the, dander, dust, pollen, everything else. Yeah, the pump actually adds an extra layer of complexity.
Are you on a Zoom call?
Besides the streaming that you walked
Yeah,
past?
but I didn't know if there's like a guest. Anyway.
No, it's just me.
Yeah.
You know what happened to have an extra microphone that I could buy?
Like this one?
Yeah.
Do you need it right now?
Yeah.
Any of the classrooms probably have one you could steal. Like
Okay.
164 has a one identical to like this.
I need it for an Electron graduation moment thing, so I don't know. It's like plug in an external microphone, but I don't get it because mine's on, so I'm like,
Yeah, if you just go into one of the classrooms and just steal one of the microphones from there. So 164 should have one just sitting on the desktop counter, and you can just unplug it from the USB.
Okay.
If that doesn't work, Sue's probably has a spare one.
Okay.
And if that doesn't work, I actually have like a little battery pack, like lapel microphone that you could potentially use. But I only brought this one in, so.
Okay.
Mallory, I have a question for you while you're here. Are we going to do Halloween stream, and are you going to show up for that?
Halloween stream.
We did one last year, and then everybody was like, "Is Mallory going to be there for the
Are
Halloween
they
stream?"
asking? Wait,
There was a high Mallory demand.
Really? From who? I don't know many people now.
You're like just your arms on the screen; they can't see you.
What's up? I love this angle.
Do you? Does it make you look extra tall?
I look like a Bratz doll.
Oh. Maybe if you made your head extra big somehow,
Yeah.
the wide angle part. There's not a pressure, I was just curious. Are you dressing up for Halloween?
What day would it?
When is Halloween? Is that what you're asking me?
I know
It's
the
usually
day.
on the 31st
I mean,
of October.
what day of the week is it?
That's a Sunday, but we probably wouldn't stream on this Sunday. So we would have to pick some day around there, probably the Wednesday before it or the Tuesday.
Yeah, if it's during the week,
Wednesday
I'm
after
fine.
it. Well,
Next week
put it
I'm
on
fine.
your schedule to potentially pencil me in for a stream. And then we
I'll
can
show
get
up to
some
class.
scary stuff, to look at.
Scary stuff. I got like 2 whole pumpkins.
You have whole pumpkins?
Whole
I don't think they're
pumpkin.
going to fit in there.
Oh, you mean in there? What kind of scary things do I own? I can bring my cat in. Sheila, she's pretty scary. She's blind. Nothing scarier
I
than
don't think she will fit in there.
lack of sight.
And if she does, I don't think it will last long. Think about it.
I'll think about it. Wait, who requested me?
Pacific asked.
Pacific Plankton, really?
Yeah.
164's door code got changed. I don't have a reason.
Do I have
Oh.
the door code to that?
They changed
It's
it.
the green key.
Thank you.
We obviously have very high security at Indiana State.
Yeah. There, Mike in the Mountain says, I demand Mallory.
That's me. I don't
Yeah.
know who that is.
If students try to take a nap in the middle of my class, what do? I just let them sleep most of the time. I figure they're sleep deprived, you know?
Oh, and I want to nap. Actually, no, I have napped in the lab before.
See right there, Pacific Plank says, are you dressing up? She wants to know.
Am I dressing up? Well, my idea for Halloween this year was to go as a character from a music video, but that's going to be a lot of work. So I was going to come as Envy Adams from Scott Pilgrim. If anyone's seen that movie.
That's very specific.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the whole point of the character. Have you ever seen that movie?
Scott Pilgrim?
Yeah.
Like, from 15 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that movie.
Okay. I watched it live.
Didn't they make two of them?
No.
Wasn't there like a sequel or something?
No, it's like a comic book thing.
Yeah.
So there was a lot of those.
Okay.
I'm talking about the movie.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll
That's
leave
good.
you to it.
Thank you. Please return my keys when Mary's done with the microphone. Hello, Freckled Science. How are you doing? Sorry, the stream got interrupted by students from my lab that needed a microphone. Let's see. Random fun question. Do you have any? Thank you. Should you get a microphone?
Yeah, she had it in her hand.
Okay. Do you have any fun microscopy devices? Yes, I have well, the microscopes are fun. I have a stereo microscope in the lab, and I have a micro manipulator that goes on the stereo microscope in the lab. And I think that's it for fun microscopy devices that we have. I don't know what the other options might be. How do you keep the samples themselves from dusting up in the chamber, like if particles of the sea star fell off? Well, everything that goes in the chamber for me is usually sputter coated with gold, which means it's not moving. And if it's dusty, like a pollen sample, all that stuff is basically, I don't know what you call that, annealed. It's stuck to the sample, and it's not going to come off. They could potentially get dusty if I don't put them away in the back there. But generally speaking, stuff won't fall off of the stub because I carefully remove it. But I don't usually have that as a problem. So, oh, you wanted me to tell her you are dressing up? Okay. Good morning. I'm waiting for 11:30. I'm starved, and it's the cheap food on campus. Oh, well, I'm glad we can entertain you while you're waiting for your food, Freckled. You went as penicillin one year, and everyone thought you were a solar system. I mean, I don't know what to tell you about that. Guess what? I'm gonna get trained on a microtome and epoxying, or whatever it's called, to trap them. Oh, that's cool. You're gonna slice up flies. Oh. I mean, I guess that's cool. You can see transects of flies, right? Do you do these things? I do not. I don't have any sliced up diatoms because they're made out of silica, I guess. And I can see the insides and outsides of them, so why do I need to cut through them? Let's see. Hi, Anna, by the way. It looks like Eunocia from Girdleview, but it's not Eunocia. I don't know what you're talking about. What looks like Eunocia? We're looking at a sea star. Robin, we are using an electron microscope. This is what we're looking into right now. I mean, literally, this is a scanning electron microscope that you're seeing images being collected from as we speak. Like this thing that I'm using is that was a picture that we just collected. So yeah. I mean, yeah, we have an electron microscope. It's right here. I just showed the whole lab a minute ago using my droid cam. And this is my scanning electron microscope lab. Then I have another lab that's my light microscope lab, where I have the stereo microscope and like 4 light microscopes and like upright light microscopes. Oh, you're looking at a boring sample. Oh, sorry. No, it's not a remote image. No, that's cool, Wabin. Sorry, you didn't know what we were doing, but this is, we're in the lab as we speak. So I'm going to actually rotate off of the C-star. We've been sitting on the C-star for quite a while. And I'm going to rotate us around so that we can look at what else I have in the chamber. So stubs 1 and 6 are so just for people who are arriving kind of late, stub 1 up here is actually the external view of a different C-star. You can't see all of it because we're too close, but you get the idea. This is the outside of it, and then 6 is the inside of it. I flipped a different specimen over onto its back, so we're looking at the stomach / orifice of the C-star here. And then as I move around, we can actually look at some other things. So this test can carousel holds 7 stubs at once. And so the 2 tall stubs that are in the middle there at positions 2 and 7 are diatom material from San Francisco Bay, from some of Pacific Plankton's material that I still haven't taken off of there because still some stuff I haven't seen. And this is actually a bit of a mushroom. So this mushroom, so I don't know the names of mushrooms, and I don't study mushrooms, but it sounds like Super Good Labs knows all about mushrooms. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit so you can see an overview of it. But this is what the underside of the mushroom looks like. It's like spongy, and these little holes are opening, so it doesn't have the traditional gills that, you know, like are the radiating gills. The whole underside of this mushroom is, it looks like spongy and yellow, and the surface of this mushroom was sticky and reddish or reddish brown. So like on the outside, sticky reddish brown is kind of short. There's another one. There's like I just collected it from right outside the building, but I don't think I could. I don't think my phone would let me get all the way outside without disconnecting from the internet, or I'd just walk us out there and show it to you. But I can take some pictures and post them in my Discord or whatever of the mushrooms. And then the other mushroom that I got was sort of like a white mushroom that was much taller and had like a ball at the top, but a very small ball. And then it was very white and fuzzy. It looked like a button mushroom that you might buy in the store, except for it was covered with like white scales. And that one did have little gills, so we'll look at the underside of that one as well. So this is one of these spongy reddish brown mushrooms that was sticky, and hopefully that was a good enough description. I live in Indiana, if that helps. And so we can actually see an overview, but we can also see, like, zoom right in on the actual, like, surface of this. So I'm going to do one like this where I take a picture, zooming in, looking at the texture a bit. But first I want to get it focused, and then we'll do an overview shot, because I kind of like to have some context for the rest of the shots that we take. So this is zoomed out. We're only at about 50 times magnification for this. And like I said, this is the underside of a mushroom. And maybe I gave enough information for somebody to be able to tell what that was. And I turned up the beam intensity to 7 because we're zoomed so far out that we don't need to have the beam intensity be quite so low, and it actually gives us a little bit more information back from the sample as a result. And I'm going to take the picture at speed 7 anyway, so we don't need a long 10-minute picture. Thank you for the follow, Lap7747. Put my headphones back on now that the students aren't in the room with me anymore. I know you told me about the Gomphonemus rofrum, and I've had that diatom before, so I wasn't super excited, but I guess I'm excited for you. Are you allowed to view any type of material with that? Well, Ben, it's my lab, and it's my SEM, so who's to stop me? But the instrument itself doesn't look at liquids very well. It doesn't have a... you can outfit these with a cryo deck on it, so it actually freezes the samples. I don't have one of those. I don't need it for what I do for research. And it has to be small enough to fit in the chamber. So if you look at old VODs of my channel here, like last week we looked at a mouse jaw and a shrew jaw. You know, they're a couple of centimeters at most. They fit in there very easily. And then a lot of times I just look at diatoms because that's what I do. Obviously the name should give that away. But so I'm a paleoecologist slash taxonomist slash ecologist slash geologist slash whatever. So we could look at any sorts of things. Sometimes I just like to put things in here that people are a little bit more familiar with, like sea stars and mushrooms, as sort of outreach. So I'm not doing any analysis on the mushrooms, so please don't try to ask me sciencey questions about the mushrooms themselves. I probably don't have any answers for you, but maybe somebody in the channel knows enough about them. Cobalt Shepherd Ethan, hello. You'd like to look at electronics and human tissue, like skin. We have looked at hair before, and one time Mallory put some blood in there, but it's not very interesting in the scanning electron microscope because you're mostly looking at the surface, you're not looking through it. So hair is pretty interesting, but blood usually is not. It just looks like little platelets in a pile of goo. So, but there's a command in here if you save up enough channel points that you can ask me to put things on there. And if it's reasonable, I might agree. So there's that. Yeah. I can probably zoom in and find some spores. Let me see if I could also, I'll just take a picture and I can send it to you or post it in Pacific's, or she can send it to you in her Discord or whatever, and then you could tell me what it is. Not super important to me to know the ID, but if somebody's super curious. Can you indirectly figure out 3D or volume information from this type of imaging? So this is just topographic information, but earlier we talked about how you could make a 3D model from a scanning electron microscope, from just pictures. And then once you have it as a 3D model, you can absolutely calculate things like surface area and volume. But you have to basically do that outside of the SEM. So you take pictures with the SEM and then you build the three-dimensional model from the pictures. And then you could scale it and determine volume and surface area very easily. You can actually figure out kind of cool things like I have a paper out in limnology and oceanography with one of my former students where we actually calculated how much silica is used by diatoms at different size ranges by building the diatoms in a 3D modeling program, and then the amount of plastic that you use when you print it is essentially the amount of silica that you have in the diatom. So you could actually calculate how much silica is in their skeleton, get a pretty good estimate of the amount of silica being used. You have to do a bunch of measurements to get all of the details correct, but there's no SEM that can do 3D imaging by itself, but there is Cobalt. They have 3D imaging SEMs. I mean, it can be automated, and you can buy those. It probably costs like $2 million that I don't have, and that I don't really need. There's not a purpose for that for me. If you're going to spend that much money, you might as well get an atomic force microscope. And the atomic force microscope actually doesn't do it with electron beams. It uses the electron wave energy, atomic force, to vibrate a little piece of metal that you get kind of close to the sample, and then it actually builds a three-dimensional model in the machine. But that's a different type of microscope. You know, people sometimes ask me for cool engineering things that can be done. I mean, there's lots of things you could do. It's just that I only use it for my purposes, so, you know, I don't need those things, and they're very expensive. So I generally try to avoid things that are super expensive if I can help it when I'm spending money for projects. So this is the spongy underside of a mushroom, and that's the overview. We can zoom in and try to look at some of the actual material. There's a cool little picture. It's like a cave, right? Each one of these little things. And so Pacific, you were asking, can we see the spores? And the answer is yes. I just need to zoom in a little bit, and then the actual spores become evident. Here at this scale, we were looking at just one of the little cave structures on the surface here, one of these little chambered spongy things. I'm just going to get a picture like this, so first I need to get it into focus, and then we'll come back and look at the actual, like, close-up. Here we go. I'm forgetting things. Have you looked at tardigrades? Yes, we have. I still have the sample back there. You know, it was hard for us at the time. We didn't have micro manipulators or anything. So I just would put the water bear on the sample and then let it dry out, and then I would sputter coat the whole cover slip or the whole slide sometimes, and then put the whole thing in the SEM. I feel like we probably have the tools to be a little bit more precise about it, but the problem with tardigrades is that if you don't process them correctly, you have to, like, basically you have to sort of silicify their skeletons so that they become rigid in order to image them correctly in the scanning electron microscope, because if you don't do that, they basically just sort of look like deflated trash bags with claws and a head, and the rest of their body is not in the right shape, right? It's like somebody had a tardigrade Christmas lawn, you know, ornament, that blow up kind, and they basically hit the button so that the air all came out of it. That's what it looks like. So you know, the face and the head are still there, and the claws are there, but the rest of it looks like a deflated bag. I'm going into electrical engineering. Next year, I may enjoy the tech side of things more than the biological aspects. Well, it's cool. I just, like people ask questions about things or they want me to do something, and it's like, I only have the instrument I have, and I have it for a different purpose than what they want usually. So, an ultra fast scanning electron microscope they're very expensive, and they do really cool things at the subatomic or atomic scale. Even you can image atoms and things with them. Super cool, but I don't need to do that to analyze diatoms, so not a lot of purpose for me. Have you looked at bismuth crystals under your SEM? Would it be cool to look at that? So any elemental, like crystals or rocks might be pretty interesting to look at in the scanning electron microscope if you had thin sections. We could actually use the elemental analyzer, or the backscatter detector might be very interesting to use looking at different minerals in a scanning electron microscope. And the actual structure of the crystals themselves would be evident, but if you're trying to get sort of the stuff that OpenSet does, there's no color, there's no light, so you're not going to get the cool, birefringence or diffraction patterns that show up in a light microscope. You're just going to see the crystals themselves. So, because the SEM gives you topographic information and then elemental information, and that's basically what it gives you. If I had a cathodoluminescence tool, we could potentially really look at some cool stuff with minerals, but I don't have a cathodoluminescence on our SEM. It can be outfitted with one of those. I don't use it, so I don't need it. Did I get rid of it? I thought we still had a micro authority request. It's possible that I got rid of it. Yeah, I must have gotten rid of it. I think it turned it off because maybe the points aren't as much as they should be. I don't know. I haven't figured it out. I'll go back and put it back. Or, Anna, you can just ask me stuff. You don't need to make a request. Googly eyes, yeah. Right. We're in the dark side. We're operating in the dark completely. Let's see. All right. Well, so the answer to your question is yes. If I had the salt crystals to grow them, we could grow them and then look at them. They would fit. So it's just a matter of what you would see. You're going to see topography, and that's mostly what we would see. If the crystals are complex, then we could potentially see a lot of cool stuff then. Let's zoom in. We'll look up here around this edge. It's nice. You can see these little pore-like structures, and then the spores themselves, and then there's some weird little radiating kind of pedestal structures in here as well. I think that might be good enough. We don't need to take it up to 8. Radioactivity is not a real problem as long as it's, it's over there and I'm over here. I was thinking about a Halloween project of growing some mold. You have just enough time to grow some nice sporangia. Well, you can send me some mold if you want. You would still love to see the gold-coated specimens. Oh yeah, I never did show you guys that. You mean like in the scanning electron? I mean in the stereo microscope? Why don't I aim to do that on Saturday? We can do a little bit of time from the stereo microscope, and then I'll have to just sort of split it into 2 sessions because I can't constantly stream from that one and then move it over to here. Don't tell me you don't have mold in Indiana. Well, I'm sure we have mold. I don't know how to identify mold, you know? I'm a diatom person, not a mold specialist. So if you wanted something specific, you kind of need to like tell me exactly how to get it. Have I looked at cyanobacteria? Are they relevant in the realm of environmental? They are absolutely relevant. They're extremely important in the realm of environmental science. And we've looked at some cyanobacteria. You know, again, if it's not prepared correctly, they kind of deflate. But we've looked at some green algae and some cyanobacteria before. You know, the samples that I've got are usually just things from lakes that are prepped that way. Oh, you said the word radio, so it gave me a radioactive Radio Joe. I mean, we could target some cyanobacteria, and Studio Cornix I'm sure has a bunch of cyanobacteria. She could lend me some. 3 counts per day. I think that's less than the stuff around me is generating. I think it'll be fine. Well, what we can do, Super Good Labs, the specimen I collected was from right outside the building. So literally I can go take a picture of it and then you can see what it looks like in hand sample, and then nothing has changed from that to where you are. So if you're interested in that, for this particular specimen, I'd be happy to go take a picture. Easy enough. Yeah. Studio could lend me all kinds. You know. Alright, so I don't know, do you want me to zoom in on an actual spore? Basidia, from the finger-like structures the spores grow from. Okay. Okay, let's zoom in. We'll zoom in. Let's see, this is... just going to put a 3 at the end of these, because I don't know what they are. Let's zoom in. Let's get closer. What's stopping us, right? As I often say to people, there's no reason why we can't just get closer, right? We're here on the SEM. There's not really a limit that's reasonable for for where we are or what we can do. Right now we're at 8,000 times magnification, so 8 times what you could see on a typical light microscope, like 800% larger, except for we can actually get these things clearly resolved. In a typical light microscope, you're not actually seeing the optimal resolution, so I'd like to point out that anything above 630 times magnification in a typical light microscope actually decreases the resolution of the image. You're just making it bigger. So if you had a 63x microscope and you blew that up to something a little bit larger, like projected onto an overhead projector, the image would be clearer than if you did the same thing with 100x and projected it to the same size. So 1,000 times magnification on a light microscope actually decreases the resolution. but it increases the magnification, and then there's some trade-off between the two. The scanning electron microscope at 8,000 times magnification or 6,000 times magnification, it looks better the closer we get. So there's no boundary like that, or there is one, it's just so small that we can't reach it. So alright, I'm just going to take this picture. It might have some little artificial lines in there. I see some at the top, but they're very faint. I'm getting nitpicky sometimes. Let's collaborate. Okay, we can do that. Actually, for either you or Studio, occasionally I can actually Zoom people in so they can talk, or through Discord they can talk. So if you wanted to be on the actual stream with me, visually or audially, we can have you in. And then for Studio, if you want to do that, you can send me some material, and then if you're going to be here anyway, you can just hop into the Discord chat and then have a microphone. Basically, we can pipe you in. You can also be piped in if you want to appear with your visage in the actual stream. We can do that as well, so people can know who they're hearing. Or we can just use a static picture for you, if you'd prefer, for either of you. Totally feasible. And then, we can just look at stuff, and then you can talk instead of me, which people might prefer, because I'm going to put them to sleep with my radio voice. And maybe you'll keep them away with scintillating facts about mushrooms and cyanobacteria. We've been seeing cyanobacteria at beaches in the summer here. It'd be interesting to learn about the talker from a completely unrelated perspective. So cyanobacteria in the beaches, I don't know where you are, but it's usually a result of eutrophication. So when you add a lot of nutrients, especially phosphorus and nitrogen, what happens is the diatoms, which are usually the things which take up the silica, phosphorus and nitrogen, will eventually run out of silica, and then they can't compete with things like green algae and cyanobacteria at that point. If there's silica, usually they outcompete them, and you get diatom blooms, which are usually harmless, in the freshwater realm, almost exclusively harmless. But when you get rid of all the silica, because the diatoms just keep blooming until all the silica's gone, then you get replaced by green algae, and then worst case scenario, cyanobacteria, because they, some of them are toxic, many of them are toxic, and they do very well under those conditions with very high nutrients typically. So there's some link between your experiences at beaches and typically agricultural pollution or nutrient pollution. So. Oh, cool. You can also, if you're coming out this way, we have guests in the lab. We've had Pacific Plankton here, a couple of weeks ago, and we could just prep the samples live on the screen and actually put them in the SEM chamber, or we could look at them in the light microscopes or the stereo microscopes as well. So I also have a little document camera so people can see what you're doing if you wanted to just handle them and talk about them. With nice clear lighting. So all those things are possible. Optical microscopes, a typical upright light microscope goes up to around 1,000 times magnification, but the objectives are that number that you're giving, 1,500, is actually because the eyepieces can go up to 16 times typically, and the objective still only goes up to, most commonly, 100 times. So they multiply those two together. So you can get a maximum visual magnification of things that goes up to 1,600 times, or sometimes people have even more powerful eyepieces that are 20 times or 25 times. But you're really just making it bigger. You're not making it better. So the magnification increases, but the resolution doesn't. So there's a cup-like thing on the left. Yeah. You wanted me to zoom over just a little bit? Is that what you're getting at? Do you ever miss colors? No. Hit you up sometime. Some algae blooms this weekend. Oh, you'll hit up some algae. Sorry. You'll hit up some algae blooms this weekend. Okay. Ooh, from June Lake. That would be nice. Yeah, Cyanobacteria is going to win whenever you run out of nutrients, basically. Yeah, it's usually related to nutrient pollution. I think I just created an invasive Amphorophalus. I left them outside for the night. Most of them are frozen to death except one. Okay. You want this image for your classes? Well, I can send you all these images. The images they just come out as TIFFs, and then I usually colorize them, but if you just want a nice clean black and white image, I can send those easily. And let's see, there was sort of cup-like thing over here that Pacific wanted me to look at. There we go. And I'm happy to share this. I think it's actually, these things aren't really cup-like. I think they're just, you know, they're deflated a little bit. And these got these little star-shaped things, little pedestals that the spores are on. Okay. I'll take one more picture of this sort of up-close stuff, but I'm going to do it at a nice high image quality, just so you can have a nice high-quality image with a little more of the detail visible on the surfaces of these things. That will look good. And I think that the brightness contrast is fine, so we'll just take it like this. You can always fix brightness and contrast outside, you know, easily fixed. Yeah, I can try to get one closer picture of Pacific. Let's see. For resolution, you need bigger lenses. Actually, it's not the size of the lens. What happens is, if you had a bigger lens, you know, like it's not that you could add a larger lens. It's that you need to have working distance between the specimen and the lens itself. And with 1,000 times magnification and the thinnest type of cover slip that we have, a #1 type cover slip, you just have enough space with the thickness of the glass to actually see what's on the other side of the glass, and not much more. And if you made a bigger lens, like an objective that went up to 200 times, the problem is that the thickness of the glass would be too thick. Even those little tiny sheets of glass would be too thick for you to actually see all the way through the glass. So that's one problem. The other problem is that the resolution for light is based on the wavelength of the light. So that's 400 to 700 nanometers typically. And that means that so I gave that range of 630 times. So it's actually kind of like a mid-ground range for where that resolution maximum is in microns, and or 630 times. But it's because the light waves themselves, the wavelength is the limitation for resolution. And the reason that the electron microscope actually produces such high quality images at such high magnification is that the wavelength of an electron is extremely small, like, you know, parts of an angstrom in length. And so that means that the minimum resolution is much, much smaller. in ours, it's probably something like, the beam width is something like 3 nanometers or 5 nanometers. That's the width of the beam. But so that means like if we looked at how many electron pixels we have for each sample, the width of our specimen, if our picture were zoomed all the way in, like the best images we could get from this particular scanning electron microscope happen at around 200,000 times magnification. And after that, it become a little bit fuzzy. You could fix them with some tools that aren't on the SEM itself, but like take the picture and then correct for some of those characteristics. But it sort of caps out at around 200,000 times, and the width of the stage at that point, or the field of view that you can see, is typically something like 1 micron. Like the whole picture is like 1 micron wide. And then there's some higher end SEMs, like a field emission SEM, which can zoom in a little bit closer. It probably could get about double that. So that's more of a limitation of the tungsten tool than anything else. The field emission ones are they're a little bit, they use a different sort of mechanic, and it actually lets the beam be narrower, which then lets you get a little bit better resolution out of your sample. It's hard to show you what we're looking at without access to an arrow or something, but you can clearly see the Cicada with the attached spores. Oh yeah, yeah, sorry, you can't, so these are the spores. So this is the Basidia, this thing right here. And this one, I guess maybe they became detached. So this is the spores, and this is, I think, what you're calling Basidia, this thing here. So it's like a little pedestal type thing with the little connecting pieces. And then each of these is the little spore for the mushroom, right? So these little oval-shaped things. And I think they're slightly deflated because we sucked all the air and water out when we put it in the vacuum. So I think maybe they're more like a grape. They're more like rotund. In the SEM, I think they become shrunken, but maybe this is their normal shape. I don't know. There's not a lot of texture on the spores themselves, but we can zoom in and look at it if you want. Pacific. Yeah, I don't miss the colors because mostly I look at diatoms and they don't have color. So I could guess what the colors are for these things because the underside of this mushroom was like yellowy orange. So, I mean, I'm gonna guess that's what color these things are. The beam is smaller in width than the wave of a tin plasma laser. It's a very, very small beam, and that's how... So the beam intensity sort of determines the footprint of the beam. I can make it bigger, but the minimum size I can make it is something like 2 to 3 nanometers, I think. And everything in the SEM is in a vacuum, yes. So, mushroom enter. Which fungus are you looking at? We're looking at a mushroom. It's a bit of a mystery to me. I should have taken a picture of them. I suppose I could run out and take a picture on my phone, but the problem is I don't have an easy way to transfer it from the phone to you guys. I guess I could bounce it through Discord or something. I could start a picture and then run out and take a picture and then come back and post it into Discord and then steal it from Discord. Because it's literally right outside the door. So let me do that. I'm going to start the next picture. We'll move over a sample. Actually, we'll zoom in and look at the surface texture really closely because Pacific asked me to. And then I'll throw my mask on, run outside and take a picture and come back and then dump it into Discord and share it with you guys so you can see the actual mushroom. The other mushroom I didn't I don't have a picture of, and it's too far away for me to get to, but it was on campus. It was like a little white, tall mushroom. Sort of phallic-shaped white mushroom that was very tall. This one was flat and pretty low to the ground. Might be mistaken for a leaf. Diatoms do have color. Yes, we're looking at dead diatoms because I get rid of the chloroplasts. And the skeleton has no color, though. So, also, thank you for giving Mushroom Mentor a shout-out, Pacific. You're not ready to stream yet? Well, Pacific's pushing you right into it. Alright. And then it'll be a race to see whether I can get back with the picture in time for the next photo to complete. Has anyone asked you about psilocybin? No, I don't even know how to say that word. What is it? Psilocybin. Psilocybin? Nobody asked me about that because I study diatoms for a living. Okay, let's see. Let's satiate Pacific's curiosity about the actual spores. Well, there's like a slight texture to it. Right now we're at about 42,000 times magnification. Just for clarity, that's a normal light microscope times 4,000. The power of magnification, 4,000 times, 40,000 times higher. So, no, 4,000 times higher. Yeah. There's like a little bit of texture on there. Okay, I think that's as good as we can do with that. Well, if I set it up to an 8-minute photo, or sorry, 10-minute photo, then we'll definitely be done with it by then. Because it's not going to take me that long to get outside. But if I do that, maybe it will be... We'll give it a shot. Okay, so beam intensity 5, speed 8. We'll start the photo, and now I'm on the clock. So I'll be back with a picture of the mushroom in a minute. Just talk amongst yourselves, and if you have questions about mushrooms, now we've got 2 people on the channel that know something, besides me, who knows almost nothing. And I'll be back. Did I win? I feel like I won. Let's see. Stream pics in the Discord channel. I got 2 pictures from there that I can share. Hang on a second. I will dump them onto the desktop so people don't necessarily need to get into the Discord. Is this one with my fingers in it? For scale, as we say. Okay, let's see. Image. Sorry, giant image coming in of my hand. There we go. I think you can see that. And then I'm not outside anymore, so I left the parts out there. So if you wanted me to manipulate it, you'll have to wait till after the stream, and then I can go grab, or I actually probably have the one that I sliced here somewhere. Sorry, I've got one more picture of my hand with a mushroom in it. So that you can see a close-up of the underside. So we've been looking at basically this the whole time. For the last hour, we've been looking at like this little tiny bit of the under spongy sort of area of it, if you can believe it. So that's the mushroom. Best I can do. Okay. What did I miss? Besides me running around. Hello, Dr. Derp. The Pacific's just been pushing everybody to stream today. She doesn't care. She wants more streamers. Okay. I have all these ideas for samples, but they're impossible to image. There's some kind of metal sample. Metal's easy, actually, to fit into the SEM. You don't even have to sputter coat it. Computer chips also can go basically straight in if they're small enough. What magnification range do you usually look at diatoms? So diatoms are usually in the magnification ranges of, well, if I'm super zoomed in, sometimes I'm all the way up 100,000 times. But more typically, if I'm looking at like a whole diatom, like from an external view, 1 to 7,000, something in that range, depending on how big they are. Spore color is significant in identifying the correct mushroom. Yeah. This picture is currently at 52,000 times. 52,000 that we're looking at a spore at. I presumed you looked at the wings of a blue butterfly. I've looked at the wings of many butterflies. I don't know about a blue one. Let's see. Who likes mushrooms on pizza? I actually don't eat mushrooms on pizza very frequently. Not a special favorite of mine. But I did have mushrooms for dinner last night in a mushroom sort of noodle casserole thing that my wife makes, which was delicious. But it's something she regularly makes. So... I love how everybody just went on to talk about food the moment I left. Mushroom is the fruiting body, yeah. Lots of screen time. All right. I'm just trying to catch up with the chat because I stepped out for 10 seconds and 2 minutes and you guys just went to town with comments. I should just leave more often and let you guys talk while the images process. Like, oh, if I'm not there to blab, people are really talkative suddenly. Okay. So there's some spores super close. We looked at this, I feel like we've looked at it as much as we possibly could. So let's jump over and look at this other sample that we have. And these are... I can't run out and get you another mushroom to take a picture of this one, but I can... if you wait, I can give you the sample that I collected it from once I start taking this overview picture, because I think I just have it over there somewhere. These are the gills. I believe they're called gills of the mushroom. We're looking at a cross-section of the gills. So like I sliced it with a knife. Just to try to sort of get a different view. And I think this one is got a little bit more moisture in it still, because mushrooms are pretty moisture-ridden. With respect to the SEM, that usually creates problems. It makes a lot of bright spots like these. And I can compensate a little bit by using the auto brightness. To be honest, like wet samples are really problematic because they vaporize when the beam hits them, and then it causes distortion. And makes it harder for the electrons to escape or to, draw correctly, basically. And so we have bright spots and dark spots as a result. And I can make some adjustments to the image, but it creates problems for everything. But if I'm going to look at mushrooms, I'm going to get some of that. So. Taking its time trying to figure out the brightness and contrast. Perfect. Okay. Well, it didn't look like it really changed that much, but it got rid of some of the brightness. Okay. So we'll do a speed sub and photo, and then I'll see if I can find the little white mushroom. It's actually kind of a big mushroom that we're looking at before people start asking me questions about it. It's look kind of like this. I cut it, so we've got the cut version. Also, it's like creating white powder everywhere, so I have no idea. But the gill part, the part that we're looking at, is just a little section from in here, from right under the edge, and then I scraped some of this fuzz, which is also on the stub. So it's got sort of like scales flaking off of it everywhere. This is kind of making a giant mess everywhere, so I threw it over here. Now I've got mushroom spores all over me. But that one was just pure white and sort of tall with a little tiny cap on it. So expert mushroom people, do your thing, I guess. Nickel might be cool. We could do some backscatter imaging on, like I said, any metals. We could probably put some pretty cool stuff together from those. I know, I've been streaming for about 2 hours already. Yeah, it's fine. Last mushroom was a bolete, and this one, based on your description, is Amanita. You're gonna take a screen break. Okay, we'll see you later, studio. Thank you for hanging out. What kind of vapor pressure would be acceptable? Like, the less moisture, the better, for everything. Drier the sample is, the better it is. So, I have an environmental mode I could put on the SEM if I really wanted to get pictures of things that are, soft. But I've never used it. So, we're in some really severe back vacuum pressure right now. The column pressure right now is 3.6 times 10 to the negative 2 pascals. So, pretty low pressure. Oh, good. Thank you for shouting out the other microscope streamers, Pacific. There's a lot of microscope streamers in there, yes. The fuzz equals to the remnants of the universal veil, very typical of Amanita. Okay, good. You don't know squat about this stuff, but it kind of amazes me how small living organisms can get. Yeah. Well, these are hand-sampled size things. It's just that I've chopped them up into small enough pieces that we could put them on the scanning electron microscope. But a lot of the stuff that we look at in here is very small from the get-go. Amanita, something like that. Yeah, so I'm in Indiana, if that helps give you some sense of where we are, helps you figure out like what it could be. And you can see that this one, these are the, like I said, these are the Gills structures or whatever they're called. So they're very linear, and I think probably the fun bits are probably out here towards the outside edge of them. Get something interesting, we'll probably need to come out to the edge of the Gills here. See if I can get the brightness to tone it down a little. There's a lot of sort of spiky stuff out towards the edges, and there's a lot of moisture in the sample. So right now we're looking at something about 1,000 times magnification. So this is sort of basically the limit of a light microscope, maybe a little closer. And a transmitted light microscope, a stereo microscope, we're already way past what it can manage. So this is pretty cool. So you can see a bunch of the little structures out here on the edge of the Gills. As I mentioned, this is the part that's, the outer edge of the cap. So when it opens the cap up all the way, this is where the spores would be, exposed. So that's why I assumed we wouldn't see anything further up the gill slits. That it would most likely be like out here, because how else would the spores escape? Okay, 7 and 7. We'll start this going, and then I can come back and say hi to chat. Right, you could do 1,000 times, but you wouldn't be able to see quite the detail, and you'd be looking through it rather than the topography, right? So I have a very nice stereo microscope, and I think it maxes out around, with all of the optics set to the maximum, I can get something like almost to 500 times magnification. So about half of this. Just heard somebody come in. It's Mary.
To put this back.
What's that?
Can I get your keys to put this back?
Everything work out all right?
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Mary brought her microphone back to return. So, cool. It's a pretty nice picture. So earlier in the stream we looked at some the internal parts of a sea star, and then we switched to these mushrooms for a bit. I've got one more mushroom image, which is I took some of the gills out, so I have like a couple of the blades of the gills, and we can look at that. I probably want to do just one close-up shot of the tips of these so we can look at the sort of spore clusters, and then we'll hop over and look at the gills, and then as Pacific Plankton was pointing out, we're about 2 hours in, and then I might do a little bit with the diatoms that are on those other stubs, and then maybe I'll try to end the stream by like 4:15 or something. We'll see. I ate lunch today before I actually started streaming, so I'm not starving like I usually am. You know, just managed to do things in the morning for a little bit. I had a meeting this morning where I was talking with a colleague that I'm working with from New Mexico, from White Sands National Park, and thank you, Mary. And she wanted to know how I colorize all of my images. So we had a long, like, here's how I go through sort of discussion, which somehow lasted a whole hour. Wouldn't think it would take me that long. It doesn't take me that long to actually make the images most of the time. All right, but teaching people how to do things is different than doing things. Okay, so let's zoom in and look at some of this stuff right here at the top. So just trying to get the focus really sharp. It's going to be a little charged, but we'll just manage around that, I think. Just because it's got some moisture in it and there's no way to avoid it. So this is about 5,000 times magnification, so we zoomed in a little bit. And let's see. I did not expect the gills to have such texture. Yeah, well, I cut across a transect of them, so it's kind of a weird. You're just kind of seeing like sliced pieces of them. And we look at the actual plates themselves, like individual gills that I pulled out from the slices, so that they're laying flat. They might have a little bit. What aphid things make long, long colonies? Lots of them make long, long colonies if they're like Brevistriata, Pseudostar Syra, usually. Knitting and enjoying this tremendously. Oh, good. Are you still working on that Shaw Pacific for my daughter? Now that you have dimensions. Hopefully you didn't have to redo something. Oh, the colorized picture of the mosquito? Yeah, that was the wing from Saturday's stream. And I just finished that last night. I was working on it while I was watching Pacific Plankton stream. So I have a big monitor and I had her stream here, and then I was basically editing that photo to add the color to it. When you start with something really good as a photo, then colorizing it actually kind of fun. You have 2 more rows and then I bind off. I don't know what that means. I'm assuming it means like tie the strings off, but I don't do any knitting, so. Finish, then edge. Oh, so you still have to add the like tassels or whatever to the edges? The fringe, yeah. Is that just like making little knots? Don't you just like make little knots, or do you have to actually knit something for the fringe? Okay, I feel like we've seen all we need to see for this particular sample. Let's look at the actual like side view of a gill. So we're looking at cross section, and then I took some of these and cut them across the bottom and then fanned them out so that you actually have the blade of the gill visible. That's what these are. So it basically, imagine we were looking at the edge of the last one, and now we're looking at the the flat panel side of it. And I need to adjust it's a little bit different height, so I need to adjust the brightness. Right, so we were kind of like out here, but these are the actual like gill panels themselves. One of those is a cut edge. I think it's probably the back side. So I'm going to do what I usually do, which is we'll take one shot as an overview. This is as far out as I can easily get, just so that we know what we're looking at later. And I can be like, we zoomed into this little part. Use a crochet hook to pull the yarn through. That's not really knitting though, is it? That's just like, you know, pulling a hook through. So there's some pretty cool texture on these, and just be patient. We'll zoom in and get a nice clear picture of that texture, which looked like it was going to be spectacular from the little tiny window where I was trying to focus. But these are pretty neat. This is major day? Well, good. I think Super Good Labs, when they were here, I think maybe they left because I haven't heard anything from them for a bit, but I think maybe I actually blew their mind with some of the some of the stuff we were looking at. So the good news is if they get that SEM for their lab, the desktop one, you should be able to see these things. So yes, we looked at some compound eyes of mosquitoes just the other day. So for headshot, hang on a second and I will show you one. Mosquito. So we looked at mosquito eyes. That was just Saturday. These are, I think you can see that. These are the eyes of a mosquito right here. And then this is the little part that the antenna is hooked to, and then its little mouthy bits over here. But you can see they're covered with these really cool little scales everywhere. And I'm sure we have old versions of compound eyes, and there's also a pretty recent SEM image on my I think we did that for when Pacific was here. We looked at another insect. We looked at a couple of hornets and bees, and we looked at some of their eyes. And I think I still have that image here somewhere. Here's a cicada's eye. So there's the cicada eye, and this is just part of their body that's adjacent, part of the head. And I had a really cool picture of like the 3 center eyes on the bee's head somewhere in here. Maybe they listed it under W for white-faced, hornet. These are the central eyes. Where did it go? Okay, hang on. There we go. So this is the 3 central eyes. Like the compound eyes, the ones that are out here, are the hexagonal sort of faceted ones, and then there's 3 central eyes that they use for light detection, the ocelli, that are usually in the center of the heads of bees and wasps and things, and also cicadas and crickets and grasshoppers. So that's the 3 central eyes, and there's an image of that one that's colorized on my SEM page, and here's the actual close-up of those 3 little eyes are right here in the center of its head. They're from somewhere in here, and then these are the compound eyes. Oh wait, they're right up there actually, just out of the field of view, but these are the compound eyes. But we've looked at a lot of insects before on the stream. It's actually a fun topic for me because I know kind of a lot about insects for somebody who doesn't study insects. Alright, I'm going to zoom in and try to focus because it's kind of hard to get it. There's so much white stuff going on. Sort of overview. It looks almost like static at this point, but that's actually the pattern. Just got a cool texture to it. It's doing some adjustment for brightness and contrast, so I'm just looking, I'm staring, I'm waiting for the machine to automatically adjust the brightness and contrast because it's a little too bright. Better. And 7.7. Just take a little 3-minute shot of this. Yeah, so the Instagram page has a lot of the stuff that the top one, the bottom one is my photography page. The top one is the SEM. There's lots of cool colorized images. Most of the things that you see in the slideshow that's down there show up from Instagram, so they're old photos or current photos. I try to keep it updated. I try to update the slideshow periodically with new stuff, so some of those are really recent. And then once we have this sort of overview shot, we can come in and look at some of the, some really kind of cool detailed things in here. So we can kind of come and zoom in and look at some of this stuff at much higher magnification. Right now we're only at about 370 times magnification. So we could get a lot closer. Hey Sarah, did you go to class and then come back from class? Or did you go teach and then come back from teaching? Or did you go to lunch and then come back from lunch? Or did you just go find another streamer to watch for a while? Let's see, I need to lock these things to keep them from creating problems. Digging around and lost where I was. We're in the sea star. Yeah. We are looking at mushroom. One of the gills of a mushroom for Sarah, who's returning. And I just want to sort of zoom in on one of these and take a look at the textures, which I think are really kind of neat. That. You'd love that as a wallpaper for your computer. Well, I don't know which one you're talking about, but anything that I colorize or that I don't colorize, I can easily post to Discord, or I can actually produce high-resolution ones that I can share a link with you for. Cicada, yeah. Why is it all just dots? Because I had the speed setting very, very fast. And then we'll do one more picture from this where we zoom in really closely. So that you can see some of the details of the, I think you can actually see some of the spores in here as well. It's not a lot of them. Maybe they're still developing. I got it before the cap opened, so you know, maybe it needed another day to prepare. Usually the dots are better dots. Yeah. Well, when I slow the beam down, the dots disappear. When I need to move around a lot, then I speed it up and it becomes very dotty. It's like an interesting network, sort of underlying sort of pattern to the network. It's kind of interesting. How dense it is. Yeah, it's very dense. Unless you're asking me a question, in which case I could measure it. What does it look like near the edge where it rolls over? We can go look at that too, yeah. Let's do one close-up of this stuff, one more zoom in, and then, because this is taken at around 1.7 thousand times magnification, so let's do one where we're actually kind of like up in it, and then we'll go out to the edge and take a look at the edge of the gill. And then we'll call it a day for the mushrooms, and maybe we'll look at some 10 minutes of looking around for diatoms before we try to find an end to this dream. Let's see. Something cool. Brightness and contrast again. I'm staring off silly. Oh, my grad students Laura and Addison are in Portland at the Geological Society of America annual meeting giving their poster presentations. Laura had a poster and a talk yesterday, and Addison had a poster this morning. And the city of Portland is filled with giant diatom statues. And so if you can see that, I think you can see it. There they are in front of them. I told them about the statues, and now they're wandering around the city looking for the diatom sculptures. So that's a giant Eunotia one. And then Laura and Addison in the picture. Super, super cute. So if you ever go to Portland, you might want to check out the diatom sculptures. I think they'll probably post those to the Twitter for the lab. So if you're following me on Twitter, I'll probably retweet it. It's a fun scavenger hunt. We need an enhance emote. People always tell me I should enhance the image. And I only have so many emotes to use. That's the problem. So I can add more. I think that eventually they're going to add a feature for everybody, not just a random selection of people, where you just get it emotes if you're a follower, because the emotes, subscription emotes, are the the ones that people have access to. But I think that they have follower emotes that they're going to make broadly available, and I think they lied to us and said it would be by September, but it's already like October. I haven't seen any, but some people have them already, and they just made a small selection of people who have certain features. So if they give me a bunch more emotes, I'll add some stuff, but I don't want to take away any of the emotes I have. So, sometime soon, exactly. I don't want to take away any of the emotes I have to add new ones, so... I may redo some of the ones that I have, or produce some different Diatom emotes, but I feel like I don't want to, subtract any, so... Got a follow emote from a speed game streamer. I think that WD40, Dr. WD40 has just like, follower emotes too. There is a Cardi B that will save you. I cheated and I have a whole bunch of emotes that only show up when you type things. So those are, like the Bob Ross one, and there he is, and hey Bluesy, and I got one that's like Shmoo for Ashley, and if you just type the word SEM, like you get this one. I suppose I could build one that says enhance when people say the word enhance, and then it shows up on the screen like that. That would be easy. Okay. Oops, I want this button. Wow. We'll zoom out. We'll come up to the edge. The curled over edge. Specific Plankton's moderator / director. Actually has a little bit of a different texture right there even than the rest of the mushroom. Kind of a neat texture in here. Okay, we'll just take that picture. I thought of you earlier today, Pacific Plankton, when I opened a coconut. If you don't like small holes, Drop Bear, you've come to the wrong place from the get-go. There's there's nothing that we look at that's not filled with some kind of small holes. Yeah, I figured. What are you up to, Drop Bear? Ugh. There's always a party in the chat. Like a bunch of deflated balloons, yeah. I suspect they weren't quite as deflated before we put them into the super low pressure. Vacuum adds to deflation. So, just getting your day started with a little SEM. It's a good start. It's early Thursday morning for you. It's just Friday at 4 p.m. for us here, and not Friday, sorry, Wednesday, and for Pacific, it's like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You love the wrinkly edge. It does look like a more raisiny. Look like a bunch of little raisins. I like, actually, this texture in here is my favorite. This texture in here is really the best to me. This like weird little little circular openings with like the deflated stuff hanging out of them. They look very weird to me. Okay. Well, if you came for the mushrooms, I think that's it for the mushrooms. And got like 10 or 15 minutes, and I still have some diatom samples on here, and for some reason in my title I included all those things, so I feel like maybe we should look at some diatoms. Ooh, we're spinning. There we go. We're super high. There we go. There's a giant diatom right there. Look at that giant diatom. Okay. So one thing we need to make an adjustment for is, because we're looking at really tiny things now, you know, like we weren't looking at tiny enough things before. The things we're looking at are even smaller. It helps us to get a little closer. So we're going to get closer. And now that the terrifying part is over, we can take a look at some of the diatoms in the sample. It's a little tiny Actinopticus. And then I'm going to have to change the brightness and contrast again, because we're at a totally different height than our previous samples. We're a lot closer. So to make the image a little bit cleaner. And now we're into the tiny realm of diatoms again. And on the bright side, I know a lot more about diatoms than I know about mushrooms. So, even the marine ones, I know more about marine diatoms than I do about mushrooms. So, oh, what a cool little, it's a Cerarella, and it looks completely, or almost completely clear of junk. It's like a little treasure we found. These samples are from San Francisco Bay, and they're actually still the samples that we were looking at a couple of weeks ago, when Pacific Plankton was here. And just to give you a sense of how endless a single sample could be, I think we've included bits and pieces of it in like 4 streams now, maybe 5. And I'm still finding stuff that I was like, oh, I didn't see this last time we were here. These are really cool structures on the surface of this diatom, though, and I'm going to work to try to get them into a little cleaner focus for us. Right now, we're at 183,000 times, so if you're wondering why does it look so bad, because we're kind of close, and I need to do a little bit of tweaking. I try to make that picture better. One thing I need to do is to change the beam intensity so it's not so big of a beam. And that's better. I still feel like we could make some adjustments to this to try to get it a little bit cleaner. The whole time we've been streaming, I haven't really had to stigmate because we've been looking at stuff that's so much bigger than what I usually have on the SEM, that it wasn't really necessary. But when you get to this like really tiny stuff and we're looking at it like hundreds of thousands of times, then it becomes critical to actually have some skill with the SEM. And at least in theory, get a better picture. It's not the best thing to start with as a subject material. Because I can't see the edges that I want to see very easily. When we start, right? So it's hard for me to see because we're so zoomed in. But these structures on the surface are kind of cool. So because it's kind of grainy, and even with our beam intensity at 5, when you're looking at stuff at 190,000 times, this is what happens. You need to have like really clear focus. If I zoom out a little bit though, we won't be able to notice the slight fuzziness of that image. And if I slow the beam down, they'll look really clear. They're still a little grainy because we're in sort of a dark area on the stub. But you can actually see the little tiny pores in the structures of the spore covers. This will be a nice, sort of a longer picture, but it'll be nice to have. Okay. Are they two atoms or is the name misleading? It's two parts, is what it means. Okay. It has no junk in the trunk, correct. Lost forever in the beauty of diatoms. Fancy meeting you on the stub, yeah. Round holes help, or a bunch of little holes in a field help. Part of the problem is like it's hard to figure out what to focus on, and you need something that has a lot of contrast. So if the problem is that these have sort of like rounded edges and rounded corners, and so it's hard to get like a really sharp, crisp focal edge. And the little holes that are in the center, I just can't resolve cleanly enough to make it perfect. So that combination is kind of like not a great choice. More typically, I would like to have a bunch of little holes that are just like, you know, together on a very sharp edge so that I can focus on the edge. So, Pragmatic, where you been? How are the critters? I don't know. The critters are good? Yeah, they're all dead, but they look pretty. So there's that. I'm gonna put my arm out like this, it looks super long because of the wide angle distortion. I've been gaming. Excellent. Playing something exciting. It's got your attention. This is a Sororella from San Francisco Bay. Red Dead Redemption. Red Dead Redemption, right? That one? I think I saw Dell play that. So I'm going to do one picture like this, where we're sort of super geeky stuff. Where we're sort of zoomed in, and then I'm going to zoom out to an overview of the same diatom. And then we'll end the stream on that. Just the zoomed out version of the Sororella. And that'll be good, right? And then I have a little bit of my time in my day to work on my paper, maybe. We'll see. I'm not totally buried in administrative tasks I still need to do. So I've got to file these stupid assessment reports and stuff, and I need to get that done. So, and if I do it now, that means I'll have all day tomorrow to work on my paper, potentially with no interruptions, or only minor ones. No classes, nothing else planned for the day, just work on my paper. So, yeah, I hate paperwork, and it's just busy work. I mean, it's like universities. This is a cool image. It's a little grainy, but I can fix grainy, so I think it'll still end up being really kind of interesting. It's just one of these coffee table photos, or calendar photos. I should point out, I'm really bad at like selling stuff. I should point out that one, if you like all the cool images that we do on yes, thank you, Pacific. I've had fun most of the day. I've been on the SEM. I spent the early part of my day showing people how I colorize images, and then ate lunch, and then came in, and I've been on the SEM ever since. So that's a pretty good day. So there's that Redbubble site if you want to buy stuff with merchandise. I don't have any like Diatoms Attack merchandise. I just have like, you know, artwork that we sometimes use on the stream. I haven't really gotten it into my head that I should actually like have Diatoms Attack merchandise, but I suppose I could. But I'm also selling new calendars. So I made a couple of calendars from SEM images, so some of the little things that spin through in the bottom part, the colorized SEM images that you see. The ones from this year, so the last year ones are from my last year's calendar, which you can't get anymore because of limited edition, you know. But I made 2 new calendars for this year, and I'll probably make another one before the end of the year. And I posted them to this calendar site. No, it wasn't part of a stream, Sam. I haven't done that yet. It's actually on my to-do list for some evening, maybe next week. So either I'll do it into Discord and you can hang out with me there and ask questions, or I might just do it as a stream one night. Not this week, next week, when I feel like I have a little bit more spare time that's not dedicated towards the paper, and where I don't feel like so much pressure to get things done in my last day off before I have to go back to working regularly. So the calendars you can get, did I make it like a calendar command? Oh, I did. Look at that. I've got a command for everything. That's the calendar store right there. And you can also buy a mug for $15. I just sell these with the barest little bit of money that we actually make that goes to students in the lab, because I don't want to charge people a lot of money for like a calendar. The calendars cost $20, and of that, $1.75 is profit that goes towards, will be dedicated towards student research. So if you want to buy somebody a calendar for Christmas, or pick a holiday for next year, they're there. And like I said, I'll probably make another one. So if you want one of these really cool images from the last year on a calendar. I also made caption versions of all of those calendars that you can read something about the image. So rather than just having pictures with calendar, it also, the captioned one has like a little description of what it is, sometimes where it was collected, or maybe it says something about diatoms or whatever's in the picture. It's mostly diatoms. So if it's on Discord, you may ask too many questions. Well, there's no such thing as too many questions, Sam. Just ask questions all you like. I don't care. You know, I don't know why people wouldn't ask questions. I encourage it here and there. So this is Sorella close. And just want to get one nice picture of it from out here as well. And that oval-shaped football thing is the diatom in question. And I need to rotate it, let's see, up numbers 50, 60 degrees, 55 degrees. Oh. Oh. This is what you guys came for right here, is to see me rotate the SEM images perfectly on one try. Okay. I'm gonna get this into focus, and then this is little pores we were looking at. That'll look like they're more or less in focus. let's see. Should I write this grant application? Well, you could sell 25,000 calendars. I don't plan on selling 25,000. Actually, just wanted to share the images in a way that people could use in their daily lives and stare at for a while and then move on to the next one. And at the same time help my students out a little bit. I still have to write grants if I want to fund things. So that's okay. It's actually, the reason I don't make that much money on it on purpose is because I'm less concerned about the making money part and more concerned about sharing things that people can, enjoy without having to pay a lot of money for them. I could have made it $22, people wouldn't have even noticed, and then we probably would make twice as much money. But it's just not that important. Not that student research isn't important, but I just want to save people that $2, I guess, if I can. So, okay, so this really cool Cervarella, we're looking at the inside of it, and we were zoomed in on one of these little sectors up here earlier, and now we're zoomed out. I'm going to just snap this picture, which will be a 10-minute photo, and I can, hey Velazzi, hello. Look at this. Did you beat me to it? No. I win. Yes, it's important, and it's nice to have a little bit of additional money to buy supplies for the lab for them to do research or whatever. But I'm not desperate for money, so I'd like to try to keep from forcing people to pay any more than they have to. Double shout. All right. Let's see. So we had a busy day. We looked at the underside of a sea star, starfish if you like. We looked at two different kinds of mushrooms. We did a little tour of the SEM lab, which was nice. We got followed by a bunch of people, including Super Good Labs and the Sleep Easy, who is, I think, still over in Comrade Bubbles' stream. But Comrade, I stopped in to say hi to our friend Bubbles before I came here. Is it just Bubs? Yeah. And she said she was going to swing by, but I think she's caught up in her actual stream. We got anonymous cheers from Anonymous Cheerer from Pacific Plankton. 2 bits. That's 4 cents. My students will be able to buy parts of something with that. And we got a follow from Wabin and a follow from Lap 7747. So a nice busy stream, lots of cool stuff. The SEM lab needs red, green, blue lights. Do you mean like behind me, like colored lights? I probably could just add them as graphics around the, the overlay. Okay, so we should find somebody to raid. That way I can, stop streaming. And the choices we have are, here's your list. Zoikia Media, they do ants. Comrade Bubbles, she's playing a game with bunnies that garden. Little Anto on Twitch, who keeps raiding me. I have no idea what they do. They speak Italian, and they're in the Just Chatting category. And Numb the Geek, who we regularly raid, so you can give me one of those. Yeah, Numb the Geek would probably be fine. I don't mind that. We got 2 votes for Numb the Geek. And then I can force Numb to play a song for you guys while we're at it. So that's a positive. So I normally force him to play at least one song. Yeah, and if you want, you can come hang out in the Discord. I will post pictures from the stream and colorized images, and we'll make some plan to actually do an evening stream. Thanks for hanging out with us, Duck Goose, and Shadowfax, and nice to see you here again, G Pike, and Dr. Derp. Thanks for checking in, and Pragmatic, hello, thank you. Evo, thanks for dropping by, and I had a bunch of, Samshung, lots of our regulars are here, looking at our regular stuff, right? Okay, let's set up a raid. We'll go raid Numb the Geek. That's what he gets for streaming in the middle of the day when I'm trying to end my stream. And we will attack him with our science. We will raid a music. And then I should be back on Saturday. We'll do a little bit on the stereo microscope, and then I'll come back into here probably and do some stuff on the scanning electron microscope. And then I may do some evening streams sometime this week. We'll see how the storms or the moon or whatever looks. We'll see. But it's been great having everybody hang out, and this is a nice way for me to spend my afternoons on a Wednesday. Try to forget about everything else for a little while, and just look at some SEM stuff. So the mushrooms are very cool, and so is the sea star, and this diatom is pretty cool. So I think thumbs up all the way around. Also, thanks for Mushroom Mentor, and we had some more mushroom people in here before that. Sarah for dropping by. Okay, so huge list of people. Thanks all for hanging out. And we'll catch you next time, right?